Sex trafficking does not look like you think it does. My name is Alia. I'm a licensed therapist, and I have worked with not only people at risk of sex trafficking, but with people who have been sex trafficked. This video could save someone's life, so please, if you're not too triggered, watch it all the way through. When people think of sex trafficking, they usually think of, you're walking down a dark alley at night, someone jumps out and snatches you and drags you away. That can happen, but the vast majority of sex trafficking happens in a very different and much sneakier way that if you don't know what you're looking for, it can just happen. There's a few different kinds of sex trafficking I'm going to talk about. They are not all inclusive. I'm sure that there's more that I'm not talking about, but this gives a good introduction at least. The first one is international sex trafficking, which is exactly what it sounds like. This happens kind of when someone in another country wants to come to the US or whatever country you're in, and they find someone who maybe can help them get through, or someone says, hey, hit me up once you get there, or once they're there, they don't know anyone, they meet someone, but they end up kind of falling under that person. But then once they get to their destination, they discover that actually the person who is helping them was manipulating them in order to get them kind of involved in a sex trafficking ring, and will pull them in to do various, sex trafficking. And because the person is an immigrant, possibly coming to the country illegally, they are especially at risk because that is something that their boss can hold over them and, use to manipulate them. The next one I want to talk about is boyfriending. It's called boyfriending, but it can happen with any gender to any gender. It's, girlfriending, whatever. But this is basically using grooming techniques to earn the trust of someone and then, pull them into doing sex trafficking work. What usually happens is a sex trafficker or affiliate or something will find vulnerable people. Now, these people are often people who have a rough home life. So children who don't have support at home, youth in the foster system, maybe adults just starting out on their own, but people who don't have that support system and who are maybe especially vulnerable to wanting love and acceptance, because we all want that. Now, this person's going to show up and start blasting the victim with love. So this will look like, giving expensive gifts, taking them on trips, taking them out to dinner, showing them off, buying them clothes, taking them shopping, just all the things that make you feel really good about yourself. And, oh man, this person really likes me. And usually that then ends up in a romantic or sexual relationship. And then they start slowly adding on more hey, my friend thinks you're cute. Why don't you kind of go see him for a little bit? And if the person complains, it's well, I bought you all this stuff. If you loved me, you would do that. And because the person's already built that relationship, it becomes really easy to manipulate the victim. And that is also why they are specifically looking for people who come from instability, places that don't have a lot of love and affection, because they don't have people to fall back on. And then it grows from there, possibly getting them addicted to drugs, because that's another method of control. Third one I'm talking about is pretty messed up. They're all messed up, but this one is familial trafficking. A lot of trafficking happens with people and likely trust. And this looks like, as you can imagine, someone who has control over another person, has them do things for them. And because there's love or their family or whatever, it's easier to pull off, and it just happens. I'm not going to go into examples or anything, because I think that could really freak people out, but I do want to say age is not a factor in this. You should not think someone is too young to be trafficked. And that's true for all of these, but with familial trafficking especially, that's something that you should not assume. Another one is survival sex trafficking. If you're out on the street, maybe your parents kicked you out, you're very vulnerable. And this is especially true with teenagers. I also want to note that I know my state, but I believe the United States, if there is any transaction involving sex with a minor involved, even if the minor consents, it is considered sex trafficking rather than sex work. People who are especially vulnerable to survival sex trafficking include members of the LGBTQ community, because there's a higher rate of parents kicking them out or disowning them, which they need to find a way to survive. And if no one's helping them, someone will pop up and offer them something. People can also be drawn into trafficking online, which I think I'm going to make a separate video about that, because online safety is just a huge topic. So it's not as uncommon as we would like to believe. So I've gone over a lot of information today. As I said, this is not all inclusive. I'm sure there are things that I didn't have time to get to or that I forgot to include. If there is anything you want to add, please leave it in a comment below. If you're not comfortable doing that, you can DM me and I will anonymously talk about what's going on, because I can't imagine this is the only sex trafficking video I make. If this was upsetting to hear, I truly apologize, but not talking about it is what allows it to keep happening, and I'm not willing to put people's comfort over preventing people from being exploited. Stay safe, y'all.